Vishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyad Ravindam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we're continuing this long section that starts with 267, even after realization of the truth, even though we've had some glimpses. There exists a strong impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth. Here it means re-identification, meaning sometimes it's very clear, other times I get re-identified. Shankara then says this needs to be conscientiously removed, rooted out. How? By steady and continuous identification with the self. This deep, deep introversion of the mind. Then he says it is the annihilation of the vasanas, here and now. That's considered liberation by the wise. Now, what we've got to do is not fool ourselves. So I was talking with a student recently, and he was saying, I don't mean to brag, but I really don't have attachments to the world. I'm not into clothes. I wear what's necessary. I don't buy a lot of stuff. I've got a car that's utilitarian. I live simply, blah, 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 blah. But I asked him an interesting question. I said, well, tell me what bugs you. What irritates you? What annoys you? And there was a whole list. Oh, people who drive 35 miles an hour in the fast lane on the freeway, and on and on and on. So guess what? He had he had many more subtle attachments and identifications that he wasn't aware of. So that's what we need to do. And I find a useful tool. It is a spiritual axiom that if I am disturbed, I'm the one with the attachment, the expectation, the identification. I'm not absolutely letting the phenomenal world be as it is, keeping my mind this intense introversion into the self. All right, So I think we're now on verse 340. Deepa is not with us tonight, so Ganesh is going to chant, but we will not be putting up the verses. Vishwa, do you have a text?
No, I don't.
Do you want mine here?
Sure. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much.
340.
340.
All right, Ganesh, will you help us out, please?
Yeah, just for folks, my internet's still kind of weird. So if I disappear, it's only because my internet's gone, not because I've disappeared midway through class.
Would it help if you did audio only and no video?
That's what I'm trying to do. So I have
All right.
my video turned off. So hopefully it's
Great.
okay. Sarvatmana bandha vimukti hetuhu sarvatma bhavanna parosti kaschid Trishyagrihe satya upapadhyate sau sarvatma bhavosya sadatmanisthaya. To recognize the entire universe as a self is a means of release from all sense of bondage. There is nothing higher than realizing the universe as a self. One realizes this state by excluding the objective world through steadfastness in the eternal Atman.
So you keep your mind intensely introverted. Some people think, okay, I've been in deep meditation and my mind has gotten still and I can see, oh, there's no self there, or there's only consciousness. I've got it. That must be realization. And that's an important point. Now you have something real with which to work. But are you still taking the phenomenal world as real? So in Yoga Vasishta, we have 3 questions that we need to answer. Who am I? What is this world and how has it come about? So we've spent weeks and weeks and weeks on who am I? I'm not the body, I'm not the prana, I'm not the mind, I'm not the thoughts, I'm not the ego sense, I'm not even the darkness of ignorance. I am the untouched witnessing consciousness, Chidakash, the space of pure awareness. But what is this world? And we approach our understanding of it from 2 meditative directions. 1, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real, the phenomenal world is illusion. Second chapter of Mandukya Upanishad, Vaitatya, falseness. The world of name and form is false. Gaudapada in the 4th verse there says, the phenomenal world is quite unreal. The proof of its unrealities, you can see it. We frequently get the term pratibimba, which means a reflection, like the image in the mirror. It is not different than the mirror. The mirror is the substratum. You can't reach into the mirror and pull it out. So from this viewpoint, the names and forms are all false. But that's not the totality of the picture. If we look at it from this angle, what does Chandogya Upanishad say? Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Sarvam Idam, all this, it's meaning the phenomenal world, Kalu, verily is Brahman. It is my mind which creates distinctions of likes and dislikes. that are not really there. It's as if you looked at a picture in a coloring book. And if the picture's a bunny rabbit, or the picture is trash, bunny rabbit, trash, well, the truth is they're both just pictures. It's my mind that says, oh, I like bunnies, nice bunny. Oh, trash, nasty, nasty. But there's no bunny there, and there's no trash there. It's pictures. So the meditation is to actually go clear back to the qualifications of a fit student. Remember Shama, Dhamma, and Uparati? Shama. I don't let the objects of the senses cause my mind to extrovert. I keep it intensely introverted. Dhamma. I don't let my mind be pushed out towards the object because of past experience. Uparati, sense withdrawal, and Shankara says the best uparati is when the sense objects don't create any vrittis in the mind. I don't get worked up over sensory perception. Let it all pass through. Let it all pass through. Keeping the mind intensely tuned up and introverted. In the beginning, maybe only able to do this for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Eventually, it has to be all during your waking hours. Your mind intensely introverted. How do we do it? By meditating on the fact that the names and forms are just creations of the mind. And what's really there is nothing but Brahman. Then you don't have any inside and outside to your meditation. Your mind is immersed in the self all the time. Now, this is where being able to spend time with the Guru is of use. Because if you can meet the Guru mind to mind, Swamiji always used to say, meet me there. For those who could do it, you would meet him in that thunderous emptiness, that silence. It was so full. Next verse.
Can I switch off the fan?
Drishyasya.
Are you there, Ganesh?
Do you want me to read it?
Ganesh, I think you're muted.
Kurvatah.
Ganesh, do it again. You're coming in and out. Can other people hear him?
Yatnatah. How is the exclusion of the objective world possible for him who lives identified with the body, whose mind...
Okay, Ganesh, we lost you. Will you start it again?
Okay, yeah. Are you able to hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Drishyasya grahanam katham nu ghatate dehatmana tishthato pahyartanubhava prasaktam anastata kriya kurvatah सन्न्यस्ताखिलधर्मकर्मविषयैः नित्यात्मनः निष्ठापरैः तत्त्वज्ञैः करणीयम् आत्मनि सदानन्देच्छुभिर्यत्नतः. How is the exclusion of the objective world?
We lost you again. Vishwa, will you read the English, please?
Sure. The English 341. How is the exclusion of the objective world possible for him who lives identified with the body, whose mind is attached to the perception of external objects, and who performs various acts for that end? This exclusion should be carefully practiced by sages who have renounced all kinds of duties and actions and objects, who are passionately devoted to the eternal Atman and who wish to possess undying absolute bliss absolute.
Could you all hear her?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can
Great.
hear.
Excellent. Okay, so what Shankara is saying is you can't have a foot in both worlds. If you're smooching that snake, you're not going to see the rope. You either grasp the unreality. The world is bad. It's just void. Shunyata. What's really there is Brahman. Don't fool yourself. I was talking with people, well, weren't all the rishis householders? Can't you get married and have kids and a job and stuff like that? Absolutely. But you cannot be attached to it. If you take the world as real, you do not see Brahman. If you see Brahman, you see the world for what it is. Pretty to look at, but nothing substantial. And if you take the body as real, and the likes and dislikes of the world is real, and the people you love and the other people you're angry at is real, sorry, samadhi will not be available to you until you drop it. Now, this is a time where once again we have to watch out for the terrible demon Yebat. Yeah, but what about this? Can I hang on to that, Jim? Yeah, but what about that? Yeah, but what about this? I'm not making up the scripture. Shankara is very clear. Finish it. Give up concern for this world. I'm reading a wonderful book called Revelations of Divine Love. It's by a 14th century English mystic, a woman, Julian of Norwich. It's actually the first book in the English language written by a woman. And she was an anchoress. An anchoress is, usually they were women, and they lived in a cell. When you decided to become an anchoress, it was usually made out of mud brick, sometimes stone, and the anchoress would go inside and they would seal her in. And all that she had was like a slit where the food went in and her chamber pot went out. No human contact. So Julian of Norwich, I think she went in there when she was younger than 30. And she lived to be 73 as an anchoress. us. She completely, physically gave up the world. Now, should I give up the world and leave it, become an anchoress or a hermit, live in a cave? Let the Lord take care of that. You just do the duty that's right in front of you. I was talking with another person today, and she was saying, "Oh, Jim, I'm just trying to find out what my purpose is." She's retired. She wants to be involved, all this sort of stuff she wants to do in retirement, but she doesn't know. So she keeps asking God, what should she do? So I said, well, frequently when I ask that question, God, what's my purpose? What should I do? I get answers like, do the dishes, make your bed. In other words, the simple tasks that are right in front of us is plenty. Do our best to keep this intense introversion of the mind. All right, Ganesh, give us a shot on the next one.
All right. सर्वात्मसिद्धये भिक्षोः कृतश्रवणकर्मणः समाधिं विदितात्येषा शान्तो दान्त इति श्रुतिः. To the sannyasin who has listened to the discourses upon the scriptures and who has cultivated calmness, self-control, etc., to him the Shruti prescribes samadhi for realizing that the whole universe is the self, Sarva Atma Siddhi.
Sarva Atma Siddhi, the accomplishment that all is the self. So we are introduced here to a technical term, samadhi. Shankara is going to invite us to practice samadhi. There are many ways of pulling this word apart, the etymology. My favorite is sama, equal, and the mind, absolute equanimity of mind. It's the technical name, the Sanskrit name for what we mean when I say being tuned up. Now, there are several kinds of samadhis, which we're going to discuss in this work. I'll go through some of them now in preparation, and then we can see them as they arise. The first we call savikalpa samadhi. Sa means with, a vikalpa means a movement or a perception, samadhi. So savikalpa samadhi is when your mind is tuned up and you still perceive a phenomenal world. In a sense, this is the only samadhi we can practice. Swamiji used to say, it's like sleeping. You cannot practice sleeping. You can only practice getting sleepy. You can take a warm bath. You can drink your chamomile tea. You can put on your silk pajamas. You can fluff your pillow. And then if you're successful in becoming sleepy, your mind slips into sleep. So, if you've been successful in practicing Savikalpa Samadhi, time will come when the mind ends. Swamiji used to say, when the last thought is thoughted, before the next thought starts thoughting. This state we call Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Anytime the mind is absolutely free from thought, that's Nirvikalpa Samadhi. In that state, the triple factor of knower, knowing, and known is gone. It is like deep sleep in that there's no individual and there's no phenomenal world to be perceived. But unlike deep sleep, you are there. Just as in deep sleep, you have no awareness of the passage of time. I can wake up in the middle of the night and I don't know, is it 2:30, 3:30, 5:30? Oh, it's still dark. I have to hit my clock. The time is 4:34 a.m. Then I know, oh, golly, I've been asleep since midnight. So also with Nirvikalpa Samadhi, when you're in it, absolutely timeless. It may seem when the mind returns from Nirvikalpa like it was just a moment. When the mind returns from Nirvikalpa, it is completely overwhelmed and reconditioned by the absolute disappearance of the individuality and the disappearance of the world. When the mind returns from Nirvikalpa, you literally watch Genesis take place. The whole phenomenal world waving out of consciousness. Another samadhi is what we call jada samadhi. Jada means inert. This is the state that many Raja yogis find. And what it is through pranayama, they're able to momentarily stop thought flow. But because there's still vasana, the veil of ignorance is still there. So the experience of a jada samadhi is, I, the individual, see nothing. My mind is totally blank for moments. It's not useful for anything. Then, when the mind returns from Nirvikalpa, and you perceive the phenomenal world, and you see it for what it is, just dream-like appearances of name and form. And your equipment functions in the world like anyone else. But inside, dead Everything is gone. Gate gate param, gate parasam, gate bodhi swaha. Gone, gone, completely gone. Completely gone beyond. Fully awake. Wow. This is called sahaja samadhi, which means natural or continuous samadhi, which is knowledge. It's all Brahman. So, with these different and there are other kinds of experiences, post-enlightenment samadhis. I'm not going to get into those at this point. If we ever study Yoga Vasishta, they're clearly articulated there. So, for now, let's go on and see what Shankara says about samadhi. Ganesh, will you help us out with the next verse?
आरूढशक्तेरहमो विनाशः कुर्तन्न शक्यः सहसापि पण्डितैः ये निर्विकल्पाख्यसमाधिनिश्चलाः स्तान्तातरानन्तभवा हि वासनाः. Even wise men find it impossible to suddenly destroy the ego once it has become strong, except for those who have become perfectly calm through Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Indeed,
go ahead.
Indeed, desires are the effects of innumerable births.
So there is a discussion among the Advaita Vedantins. Some schools say Nirvikalpa is not necessary. Others say that it is. I want to stay out of that. Swamiji taught that we need to experience Nirvikalpa Samadhi. How do I know if I've had it? Believe me, it is absolutely self-validating. The image Swamiji used to use all the time, it's like a balloon filled with hydrogen or helium. And these threads tie it down. These are our vasanas. And as we're practicing our Savikalpa Samadhi, it's deep introversion, we're renouncing attachment, renouncing identification. It's like snipping each one of these threads. Each one is a vasana. You never know when it's your last attachment. But when it is, what happens to the balloon? It rises and expands and rises and expands. And then finally, pop! And then the balloon falls to the ground. What has happened to the hydrogen of the helium? It is one with the atmosphere. You're not a person anymore. It's gone. It's like waking from a dream. For some people, it's a profound and thunderous experience. For others, it may just be a click. Now I know it. Don't make Nirvikalpa this great object of desire. That in itself becomes problematic. Let it sneak up on you. Practice savikalpa samadhi. Keep the mind tuned up. Do not think you will get to nirvikalpa by trying to stop the thought flow through willpower. You'll only get a jada samadhi, an inert one. You, the individual, will still be there, aware of nothing. Instead, renounce, renounce, renounce. That's the key. And then savikalpa will slip into nirvikalpa. Next verse.
Aham buddhyaiva mohinya yojayitva pratirbalat vikshepa shakti purusham vikshepayati tadgunaihi. The projecting power, through the aid of the veiling power, confuses the man with storms of egoistic ideas and distracts him through the attributes of that agitation.
So, for most of us, until we have nirvikalpa at least once, I think there's another scripture says it only needs to last 7 seconds. We don't seem to be able to permanently let go of ahankara. And the veiling power comes down. How do I know my mind has vasana? Because I have non-apprehension of my essential nature, veiling power. And then always the next step is vikshepa shakti, projecting or agitating power. I think I'm a person. I think the phenomenal world is real, more, better, different. That's where I am. My mind's in ignorance. Don't worry about resolving the struggle of ego. Drop it all. Come home. Come home. Next verse.
Vikshepa shakti vijayo vishamo vidhatum nisheshamavarana shakti nivritya bhave drigdrishyayoho sfutapayo jalavidvabhage nashyate tavaranamatmani cha swabhavat निस्संशयेन भवति प्रतिबन्धशून्यो विक्षेपणां नहि तदा यदि चेन्मृषार्थे. It is extremely difficult to conquer the projecting power unless the veiling power is perfectly rooted out. And that covering over the Atman naturally vanishes when the subject is perfectly distinguished from the objects, like milk from water. But the victory is undoubtedly complete, and it becomes free from all obstacles.
Yes. So we continue to tune up the mind, continue to discriminate between the self and the subtlest thought, the idea of self. Projecting power is always problematic as long as I think I'm a person. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. Drop it. Drop it. Remember that the shift between the waker and the dreamer is a gross shift. I awaken from the dream. Wham! Oh man, that was a vivid dream. The shift between egoism and samadhi, when I know I am Brahman, though incredibly profound, is subtle. Very subtle. Keep discriminating. Keep renouncing any identification with any personal sense of self. Inside, be a sannyasi. I've given up the world. Inside, be like Julian of Norwich. Be an anchoress. All I have, all I need is you. Next verse.
Samyak vivekah sfutabodhajanyo vibhajya dridrishya padarthatvam chinnati maya kritam ohabandham yasmad vimuktasya punarna samsritihi. Perfect discrimination, arising from direct realization, distinguishes the true nature of the subject from that of the object and snaps the bond of delusion created by Maya. There is no more transmigration for one who has liberated himself from this.
Yes. So, how do I attain liberation? With this perfect discrimination, continuous, until in samadhi I realize it's me. We don't become the self. I realize what I've always been. And the cause for rebirth is gone. First of all, the self was never born in the first place. Are you born into a dream? Do you incarnate into a dream? No. Seemed like it when I was dreaming. How strange. For all this time, I thought I was a person. I never was. Where did he go? Gone. While there's still some vasana, we have to do this discrimination as a practice. Once all the vasana has been removed, then discrimination is not a practice, it's an obvious fact. Ramana Maharshi said, just like for the ordinary person, You don't have to practice remembering you have a human body and that you're not a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig. So also for the person of realization. It's very clear, it's very obvious. I'm not a person. I'm that space of pure awareness. All of this passes in front of me, never touched by anything. Till that's sthita prajna, steady wisdom, we practice. We practice. We practice. Next verse.
परावरैकत्व विवेकवह्निः दहत्य विद्या गहनं ह्यशेषम् किं स्यात् पुनः संसारणस्य बीजम् अद्वैतभावं समुपेयुषोऽस्य. The fire of knowledge that the jiva is the Brahman entirely consumes the impenetrable forest of avidya or nescience. For him who has realized the state of oneness, is there any seed left for future transmigration?
Yes. So we talk about the jiva, the sense of the individual soul. In the fire of realization, I see, oh, I just had the thought that I was a person. It's not that my individuality merges into Brahman, but I just had all these stupid ideas. That's why I prefer the term, not jivatman, the individual self, but jiva bhavana, the feeling, the belief that I'm a person. It's like a strange hypnotic state, but it's not real. It's not real. Never was real. Next one.
आवरणस्य निवृत्तिः भवति हि सम्यक् पदार्थ दर्शनतः विनाशस्तद् विक्षेप जनित दुःख निवृत्तिः. The veil that hides truth gets lifted, indeed, when reality is fully experienced. Soon follows the destruction of false understanding and the cessation of misery brought about by agitations created by the false knowledge.
So, when the veil of ignorance is torn asunder, and the mind is illumined by the light of the knowledge, I am Brahman, and all this world is Brahman. There can be a period where the knowledge filters down through the body. If you were here in my apartment, what I would be doing now is I would have the ceiling fan on. And then I would ask Vishwar, somebody to turn off the fan and say, look up at the ceiling fan. And you see it's still turning from momentum. But in time, it slows down and slows down and slows down. So for some people, after the dawn of knowledge, it may look to other people like they're extroverted in the world. But there's no juice there anymore. And in time, everything shifts and changes. Empties out. Because there's nothing left. No ego drive anymore. It's gone. Person is empty. Next verse.
एतत् त्रितयं दृष्टं सम्यक् रज्जुस्वरूपविज्ञानात् तस्माद्वस्तुस्तत्त्वं ज्ञातव्यं बन्धुमुख्ये विदुषा. These three are observed in the rope when its true nature is fully apprehended. Hence, the wise man should know the true nature of things in order to break.
We lost you again.
In order to break his bonds.
Read the whole thing from the beginning again, Vishwa.
Okay. These three are observed in the rope when its true nature is fully apprehended. Hence, the wise man should know the true nature of things in order to break his bonds.
Yes. So the Vikshepa Shakti, the veiling power, the extroversion in the world, all of that business is gone when the person of wisdom realizes their self. So I like to say it really gives us two things. The first is what I call existential freedom, meaning nothing ever touches me. I do nothing. Nothing ever happens to me. It's just the movie going by. Now, practically speaking, this gives the mind an enormous peace. And then you finally find out where happiness is. There's no happiness of any consequence in the world. It's trinkets and baubles at best. Happiness is the mind abiding in the self. Atmaramana. We have Lord Brahma's birthday coming up. Is it on the 21st, I think?
I think so.
Yes. One of my favorite images, you can find it on the internet if you Google it. Lord Hanuman embracing Ram. Love that photo. Because there's Hanuman with his arms around Ram, embracing him, and there's just this feeling of bliss. Ram is just neutral. So Lord Hanuman is our mind. Where does the mind finally feel safe and at peace? Not the monkey mind extroverting into the world. Come home. Come home. Ganesh, are you there? One more verse.
Yeah. Ayogni yogadiva samanvayan matradirupena vijrambhate dhihi tatkaryametadvitiyam Yato mrisha drishtam brahmaswapna manoratheshu tato vikaraha prakrite aham mukha doha pasana vishayascha sarve kshanen yatha क्षणेन्यथा भावितया हृमीषाम् सत्त्वमात्मा तु कदापि नान्यथा. Just as a piece of iron, through contact with fire, manifests as fire, their intellect manifests itself as the knower and the known through the immanence of Brahman. These two, the effects of the intellect, are observed to be unreal, as in delusion, dream, and imagination. So too the modifications of Prakriti from the
Go ahead. So to help us out, Vishwa.
Okay, should I start over?
Yes.
Just as a piece of iron through contact with fire manifests as fire, the intellect manifests itself as the knower and the known through the immanence of Brahman. These two, the effects of the intellect, are observed to be unreal, as in delusion, dream, and imagination. So too, the modifications of Prakriti, from the ego down to the gross body, and all the sense objects, are also unreal. Their unreality is indeed due to their being subject to change every moment, and the Atman never changes.
Yes. So we have this Brahman contact of the subtle intellect because of its nearness to Brahman. It appears to be conscious. It seems like I have states of consciousness, when in fact all those modifications are objects of awareness. The best example I have is the subtle intellect is like a prism. Sunlight shines and strikes the prism. You put a white piece of paper underneath and you get the spectrum. But the various colors are nothing but the sunlight appearing as the spectrum refracted through the prism. So what Shankara is saying, when consciousness strikes the subtle intellect, it manifests as the individual knower and the objects known. The Buddhists use the term dependent arising. They arise together. But in fact, they come about in exactly the same way as they do in a dream. Last night I dreamt I was at a restaurant. I was sitting at a table and I had ordered and they'd served a grilled chicken salad. Actually looked pretty good. I'm a vegetarian. In the dream, it looked pretty good. In the dream, my one mind refracted as the dream body, the dream ego, with the dream restaurant and the dream grilled chicken salad and my feelings. Ooh, num, 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 that looks good. Then I woke up. It was my dream mind that imagined that. This is no different. Don't get involved with it. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All all this is verily Brahman. All is Maya, all is bliss. Sarva Maya, Sarvamananda. All right, one more. Are you with us, Ganesh?
Yes, hopefully for now.
Well, we've got an assistant Ganesh.
I'll take it.
Okay. नित्याद्वयाखण्डचिदेकरूपो बुद्ध्यादिसाक्षी सदसद्विलक्षणः अहं पदप्रत्यलक्षितार्थः प्रत्यक्सदानन्दघनः परात्मा. Eternal, non-dual, unbroken knowledge of one form, the witness of the intellect, etc., neither gross nor subtle, indicated by the term I, the embodiment of subjective eternal bliss, is the nature of the Supreme Self.
Yes. What is this Brahman? What is this self? The witness of all phenomena. Always felt within, not as a feeling like an emotion, but my experience of the pure subject. I. Who sees the phone? I do. That's yourself. You don't get another self. Stop your mind and all the various superimpositions thin away. And what's left is I alone. Okay, we'll stop here tonight. What verse do we start on next week?
353.
Am I still online? Can you hear me?
Yeah, 353.
353 next week. Okay, we have time for questions. Thank you, Ganesh. You did a great job with technological hinkiness. Any questions?
I still struggle with the empirical world being a complete illusion. I can see that my mind is nothing but imagination, but I see how dependent my mind is on the empirical world. That's how it develops. That is my inference for believing it's true, but I also see contradictions in everything, so I could see it being an illusion too, if contradiction is the law. But I don't know, I'm just still not there yet, if you understand what I mean.
And all that I can ask you to do at this point is be open to it as a possibility.
Oh, I am, because I don't know. Yeah, my whole point is I don't.
And I appreciate your honesty. What I'm hearing you say is I have not experienced that yet.
Yes, if I do, then I can easily change my mind. But I infer that it's real only because my mind only develops through it.
I get that.
Makes sense.
Now, can you let go of that?
I don't know, but I'm trying. So I don't know.
So all I would invite you to do is be open to the possibility that the entire phenomenal world is a light show.
Yeah.
And if you don't experience it that way yet, it means you still have attachment and identification. You won't figure it out. You won't reason it out. That's not how you will get to it. The reasoning and the figuring only has value to inspire you to do all the stuff Shankar was talking about at the beginning. keeping the mind intensely introverted, dropping my attachment to anything in the phenomenal world, letting go of any idea of self. And that means, am I willing to let go of any philosophical position? That's the process, Justin.
Okay. But isn't this a philosophical position in itself? I don't know.
You let go of that?
Okay, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. What verse was that last verse that we finished? I got disconnected. Sorry.
353, I think we said, was the next verse for next week.
Okay. Thanks.
Good question. And I appreciate your honesty. Any other questions on any of the stuff we covered tonight? It's difficult material.
Jim, to follow up on the question, I think Justin just asked if we don't fully see that the world is just a light show and we take this empirical thing to be real, the world to be real, you said that means we still have attachments. And the way to drop that would just be to tune up constantly.
Stay tuned up and don't get invested in the world. Don't get invested in people, in relationships. Let it all go. Keep the mind intensely introverted, yes. But your mind won't introvert if you take sister, parent, grandmother, husband, job, foot as real. Making sense?
Yeah, it does. It's a vicious cycle, Jim.
Any other questions? All right, let's sit.